Hello everyone, I hope you're well. Today we're going to talk about agriculture, and more precisely we're going to talk about chemical fertilizers. So why do I think it's an important topic? Well, actually it's very strategic. The capacity to produce chemical fertilizers and to use them will have a direct impact on the capacity to produce enough food for the population. Over the last 12 months, we have seen a lot of tension in this market. For example, we have seen an increase significant in the prices of chemical fertilizers, especially at the end of 2021 and beginning of 2022. Also, we have seen a lot of social unrest among the farmers, and also some governments asking the farmers to decrease the use of chemical fertilizers to decrease the impact on the environment. When there's a lot of tension on the market, it means there's going to be a lot of volatility in the market. And so for sure, there's going to be some great buying opportunities. So the idea today is to present you with all the ins and outs of this subject. Why do we have, so much tension? And then at the end of the video, I'm gonna present some example of quoted companies who are producers of chemical fertilizers. All right, let's do this. In order to grow, each plant needs three main macronutrients. First of all, it needs nitrogen. This is the most important one. Then it needs phosphorus and potassium. And so the chemical fertilizers are mainly using these three macronutrients. Each one has a specific function for the plant. For example, nitrogen, it's going to help a lot the growth, especially the growth of the leaf. Then phosphorus, it's going to help the development of the roots, the flowers, the fruits. And for the potassium, it's going to help development of the stem or movement of water in the plants. So the farmers are going to use these chemical fertilizers, but it's a little bit different between nitrogen and the two other. For the nitrogen, it's going to have a short-term effect, and so they need to use it every year, sometimes twice a year, and then the nitrogen is absorbed by the plants or it's lost in the ecosystem. And for the phosphorus and potassium, they have more a long-term effect, and so the farmers won't have to use them every year. To go back to the most important one, the nitrogen, usually nitrogen-based fertilizers are, ammonia, or it can be also ammonium nitrate. So the main nutrient for plants is nitrogen. And in order to be used by the farmers, it needs to be transformed into ammonia. So you can see here, ammonia is NH3, and at the beginning, the nitrogen is N2. So actually, this German chemist, Fritz Haber, at the beginning of the 20th century, has discovered a very important process which is still used today to create ammonia. And this process is called Haber or Haber-Bosch process. And let's take a look at it. So we have here a description of this process. It's a pretty complex one. What you need to understand is that it's very energy intensive. For example, there's a lot of high pressure and high temperatures which are needed to be to go through these steps. But also, let's take a look at the inputs. There's some basic inputs like air. So as you know, in the atmosphere, there's 78% of nitrogen, N2, the gas. In the inputs, we have also water. And the last one, but the most important, is methane. So methane is the main component of natural gas. So basically, what you need to understand is that one of the main inputs in the process is natural gas. And this is going to have many implications on other, steps. But here, so you can see the production, and in the end, we're getting ammonia, so the NH3. The discovery of this industrial process to create ammonia was actually one of the main discoveries in the 20th century. So it has enabled to create much more fertilizers. And so after that, it has enabled to increase a lot the crop yields. For example, we can take a look here at corn yields in the United States. And you can see that, after the end of the 1930s, when the farmers started to use a lot of fertilizers, then we can see an increase, very strong and steady increase in the yields. So it is really this invention who has, enabled us to produce more food. And so I want to show you this very interesting study. This is a study where they're trying to estimate the population which could be sustained without chemical nitrogen fertilizers. So basically the result is this part in gray here, and the total population is over there. Now it's a little bit more. We are reaching approximately 8 billion people today in the world. So it means that today we have 50% of the whole population which is reliant on chemical nitrogen fertilizers for their food. So now let's take a look at the countries who are producing ammonia. So here you have the top countries. The first one is China, which is by far the first one. They are producing more than 48 million tons of ammonia. And then we have Russia, India, and the United States. So then if we move to phosphate, the input is phosphate rock, which is used to produce the fertilizers. And so here the first one, the first producer is China. Then the second one is Morocco, and then United States, and then Russia. And finally, if we look at the potassium, so the fertilizers are produced using what we call potash, which include potassium. And so the first producer is Canada with 32% of the production. And then we have Russia, Belarus, and China. So let me give you some comments on these figures. So first of all, as you can see in this very strategic market, we always have China and Russia in the top 4. Secondly, as you can see, European countries, I mean West Europe, are not big producer, clearly. And the last comment is, if we take a look at especially potash, you can see that we have 2 countries who are at war, or directly or indirectly, Russia and Belarus. And it's represent a significant percentage. It's 37 or 38% of the total production. Because of the strong development of chemical fertilizers, we have seen over the last year more and more critics because of the environmental effect. One critic is about the energy consumption, and the other one is about the real impact on the environment, the pollution of the water, for example, acidification of the soil, also the eutrophication, which is the accumulation of too much nutrients in some places. So, I mean, that's for sure. We have some pollution because of fertilizers. It's not because it's chemical. You're going to have pollution with any kind of fertilizers, especially if they are not correctly used. So before I continue, let me show you this information about the total fertilizer consumption. So this is everything, all types of fertilizer, which include nitrogen, potassium, and phosphorus fertilizers. So it's over the last 60 years. As you can see, we have a strong growth, but it seems like it's not growing very fast during the last few years. It looked like the farmers are getting are optimizing the use of these fertilizers, I believe. Now let me give you some information to answer these critics. First of all, regarding the energy consumption. So we're talking about basically the production of ammonia that we talked before. So here they're saying that basically this production of ammonia in the world, it amounts to approximately 1% of carbon dioxide emission. So that's a lot, but in the end, only 1% of the global carbon dioxide emissions. And when you look at this, you need to compare with the benefits on the other side. And basically, we're talking about producing a fertilizer which will enable to produce enough food for 50% of the whole population. So you have a small drawback on one side, but on the other side you have a huge benefit. So that's what I wanted to tell you about the energy consumption. And then regarding the impact on the environment, what I want to tell you is that I'm not a specialist, but I want to show you this study. Every time you're talking about the impact on the environment, you need to ask yourself, what's the alternative? Okay, is there a better solution if you want to produce, how much, the same amount of food in the end? And so this is very interesting meta-analysis. Basically, it's looking at the impact of going organic, okay, from a classic chemical fertilizer to organic method. And you can see that the impact is not always going the same way. For example, you can see the impact on energy use, acidification, greenhouse gas emission. And for example, if you look at acidification, you see that if you go organic, then probably the impact on the environment is going to be worse, you see. So yeah, that's what I wanted to tell you. It's not always, if you don't like chemical fertilizers, it's not always, if you want to continue producing the same amount of food, it's not always easy to find a better solution. So these critics have started to have an impact on some laws in some country and governments who are putting in place plans in order to reduce the impact of these chemical fertilizers. So for example, in Canada, there's a plan in order to reduce by 30% by 2030 the emission related to the application of fertilizers. Actually, in Canada, this is happening at the same time as some sanctions against Russia. There's a new tariff of 30% on Russian imports, and actually there's a lot of nitrogen fertilizer who used to be imported from Russia. So that's why they have the farmers have been penalized twice basically, and it has created a lot of unrest in Canada. The second example recently is the Netherlands, so where there's some radical plan to decrease the impact of ammonia pollution. Actually, in the Netherlands, there's a lot of livestock breeding, and this is consuming, in order to produce milk and meat, it is consuming a lot of cereals and therefore a lot of chemical fertilizers. So also in the Netherlands, there's some social unrest, and the last example I wanted to give is Sri Lanka. So basically, it is a country where the president has decided to try to move 100% organic. That's what he said. And so he has decided very quickly to ban imports of chemical fertilizers. And then it has been withdrawn, but it did have an impact on one season. And you can see here, for example, it had a very big impact on the decrease of yields, especially for rice and for tea. Basically, it's between 20 and 40% decrease in the yields. So, this has contributed to, with other things in Sri Lanka, it has contributed to the social unrest in the country. So this is a good example, Sri Lanka, because for you to understand that there's not a simple solution. Most probably, you can do some optimization in the use of chemical fertilizers, sometimes decrease a little bit, and sometimes you can switch to organic when there's less impact on the environment. But you just need to understand that there's not one simple solution to decrease the impact on the environment. So now let's take a look at the prices and especially the evolution over the last 2 years. So here we can see, for example, the prices in Illinois, in the US. So as you can see, the sharp increase has started at the middle of the year 2021 here, just after the summer. If we look at this other chart, which is an average of the prices for North America. So you can see the same sharp increase here in the second part of 2021. There's a strong big drop afterwards, and then again more tension, when the war in Ukraine started. Over the last few months, it has, there has been a big drop. It seems like there's less tension on the market. So of course, this evolution can be compared to the evolution of the price of natural gas, especially for ammonia, obviously. So here you can see the evolution of natural gas in the US. Okay, so you can see the first big rise in the second part of 2021, and then again we have big rise now in 2022. We are very close to the maximum here on this chart. So this is for the US. What is interesting is to compare this with the price of natural gas in Europe, because actually there's a very big difference between these two zones. So here you can see the difference. Sometimes we have a tenfold difference between the two prices. The US is down here, and this is the price in Europe. Obviously, I mean, we can explain this difference because in the US there's a lot of production, and especially the production of shale gas. And on the contrary, in Europe, there's not a lot of production, and also they are very reliant on natural gas coming from Russia. You can see here the evolution of the export natural gas pipeline export from Russia to Europe, and over the last 2-3 years it has declined very a lot, and we're getting very close to zero actually. We'll see what happens, but this is creating a big tension, especially in Europe. So what I know is that there's some plants, ammonia plants, who have stopped their production, because with these prices they cannot make any profit. So for the moment there's no big shortage of fertilizers in Europe, but this is something to monitor in the coming months. In order to understand the markets of fertilizer, you need to understand the market of grain, the grain demand, because in order to produce grain, you need fertilizers and especially chemical fertilizers. And so actually, over the last 20 years, the demand of grain has increased significantly. In average, it's 2.5% approximately. And this has happened because there's a lot of developing countries who have increased significantly their consumption of dairy product, and especially their consumption of meat. So here we have a very interesting analysis where you can see the relation between the GDP per capita and the meat consumption in several countries. And it's always, the shape is more or less always the same. The average is here in green. So basically, you can see that at the beginning, we have a very, very strong increase between 500 USD per capita and 5,000 USD per capita. It's multiplied by 3 or 4, between these 2 points. So a lot of countries have gone through this path, especially over the last 20 years, and it's going to continue over the last 10-20 years. We have some very, very big countries with a lot of people like India, Bangladesh, Indonesia, Pakistan, who are currently going through this phase, and they are increasing their meat consumption. And actually, you need to understand that when you produce in order to produce 1 kilo of meat, you need to produce before 3 kilos of grain, which is consumed afterwards by the animals. So it's an industry who is using a lot of indirectly a lot of fertilizers. And well, this is something which has been analyzed by also some environmental groups and some governments. So let's take an example here. For example, in Canada, there's a plan to reduce significantly the emissions, especially emission related to the use of fertilizers, especially in the livestock breeding market. And so we have an association here, New World Animal Protection, which has done an analysis on this subject. And basically their conclusion, you can see it here, they think that yes, it's okay, we can achieve these goals set by the government, but the consumption of meat and dairy needs to decline by 84% relative to the current level by 2050. So you can see here the summary, so the decline of 84% of meat consumption and dairy products. And here, so in this case, you can decrease the emission of by 50%. So honestly, it seems completely unrealistic. I mean, decrease of 84% of dairy product and meat, but you can see that here it's already happening in some countries like Canada. There's another trend who could impact the fertilizer market. It's actually the biofuel. In order to produce biofuels, you need to use, for example, corn. And so indirectly, you need fertilizer to produce them. So actually, there's already, for example, in the US, some ethanol in the gasoline. There's already 10%. And as you can see here, the government is thinking about increasing this percentage, maybe going up to 50%. So it's going to create more demand on fertilizer and could, well, indirectly, increase the price of these fertilizers. To end this video, I will now show you some examples of quoted companies in this sector. We're talking about producers of chemical fertilizers. I have 4 of them. We have Mosaic Company, Nutrien, Yara International, and CF Industries. So they are based in USA for 2 of them. One is based in Canada, and the last one, Yara, is in Norway. But they do have some production sites all over the world. As you can see here, the main difference is that for Mosaic Company, they are, in the mining sector because they own some mines of potash and phosphorite. And afterwards, they are also producing, obviously, fertilizers with this product. But they do not have any ammonia plants. The other 3 companies here, they do have some ammonia plants. So let's take a look at the market capitalization. So we're talking about very large caps here, between 11 and 52 billion dollars. What is interesting is to look at the valuation ratio. Here you have enterprise value divided by EBITDA, and also price earning ratio here. And I must say that for these 2 very important ratio, they seem pretty attractive, especially for Mosaic and Yara International. As you can see, regarding the dividends, it's not great, except for Yara International. They are, they have a dividend yield today of 8%. And finally, regarding the price to T-book ratio, well, the 2 best ratio are also for Mosaic and Yara International. So to continue, let's take a look at the production sites to understand the difference between Mosaic and Yara International. For Mosaic, well, basically all the production sites are in the Americas over there. They have some production in Asia, not too much, and 0 in Europe. On the contrary, for Yara International, as you can see, when this is the map, and when you zoom in, you can see that there's a lot of production sites in Europe. And especially, they do have some ammonia plants over there. So this can be a problem because they are using, as you know, natural gas to produce ammonia. And actually, Yara has made some communication recently saying that they need to stop the production in some plants, ammonia plants in Europe, because of the rising prices of natural gas. So to me, that's a big risk for this company. So in the end, when I did this quick analysis on these 4 companies. Obviously, if you want to invest, you need to investigate more and do your analysis. But for me, the most interesting company is Mosaic Company. Thanks for watching. If you like my videos, please subscribe, like, make some comments. This is really helping me to develop this channel. Thank you and see you soon. Bye-bye.